Well, the latest round of Steam Next Fest demos have come and gone, and I played quite a lot of them. I know it might seem strange to talk about them now, but hey, if I'd stopped to make this video during Next Fest, I wouldn't have checked out as many demos as I did. I think I played around 20 or so, but I'll only be highlighting 15 here. I found that by the end of the week I was starting to get a bit burned out, and I suddenly had no patience for demos that didn't automatically grab me or didn't give me a full tutorial up front. So out of respect for not really giving those last few demos a fair shake, I won't mention them here. As for the games I will be discussing, I will link all of their Steam pages in the description, and if a game still has a demo up, I will say so below as well. The good news is that as of writing the script, all the demos were still available, so fingers crossed they're all still there as of posting. The first demo I played was Wanderstop, described as a narrative-centric cozy game about change and tea. You play as Alta, a fallen fighter struggling with her perceived failures. During her journey to find herself again, Alta does indeed find herself at a whimsical tea shop in a magical forest, where she's recruited against her will to help the owner, Boro, tend to the shop and its customers. Alta, however, does not want to be there, and she is determined to be on her way. Wanderstop is a game that I didn't think I was interested in. When I first saw people talk about it, it struck me as yet another witchy potion shop game and nothing more. When I saw that it had a demo on Next Fest, I checked out the Steam page, and to my surprise, the trailer alone had me completely hooked. Suddenly I was wildly curious about this game, so I downloaded the demo, and yeah, I'm all in. The art is gorgeous, the story is intriguing, the mechanics are refreshing, and Boro is adorable and precious, and I will protect him with my life. Wanderstop releases on March 11th, 2025, and I am so excited to jump into the full game and explore this beautiful world. My second demo was for Tailside Cozy Cafe Sim. I participated in the playtest for this game last year, and while the demo was not that much different, it was still fun to experience again. Tailside is a charming little pixel game where you discover the joys of running your own cafe. The game starts out pretty straightforward. You meet up with your friend Toffee, who is freaking adorable, by the way, and they get you set up running the shop. At first, you're just making espresso. You grind the beans, brew the coffee, pour and serve. But as you level up, you learn to create more elaborate drinks, and the crafting process becomes more intense. Add in a stream of customers coming in the door, who leave their coffee cups all over the floor for some reason, and it can get pretty chaotic. You also unlock more decor items as you play, which is always a plus for me. I've really enjoyed both of my experiences playing Tailside so far, and I'm eager to see what the full game will bring. It's currently scheduled to release sometime in 2025. The third demo I played was Camper Van Make It Home. This is a game that's been on my wish list since I first heard about it. It's a decorating and organizing game, but instead of taking place inside a house or an apartment, it's inside a camper van. I really wanted to love this demo, and I do very much think the potential is there for this game to be great. The art is beautifully detailed, the environment is extremely cozy, and the demo seemed to have a lot of content in it. There was a bar on the right side of the screen that contained icons with each category of items that you had to put away, like clothing or kitchen stuff or whatever, and each category had a ton of items in it. I could have easily sunk hours into the demo based on that alone. However, I struggled with the gameplay as I found the controls very clunky. For instance, I had issues with maneuvering the camera, and I kept having a bug where the camera would start to zoom out of its own accord for no reason. I was able to rotate items before placing them down when using a controller, but not when I was using a mouse and keyboard. There were also some items that seemed to have pre-placement, while others only had one spot that you could put them in, and you couldn't find anywhere else to put them. I eventually got frustrated and just unfortunately had to give up. That said, I think the game could be fantastic if those issues were addressed, and I have full confidence that they will be. I joined their Discord and I left a comment detailing my issues, and the devs responded kindly and said they would look into it. I saw some other people having some of the same issues, so I'm confident that these are just problems that devs didn't realize were there, and they'll be able to fix them and make the game really shine. Despite the issues that I had with the demo, I remain excited to see what the full version of Camper Van Make It Home has to offer. It's currently set to release sometime in 2025. Demo number 4 was Instance, another game I've had on my wish list since it first came across my radar. Instance is, believe it or not, a scrapbooking game. You use the story cues and the in-game supplies to craft photo albums that follow the stories of a family across the years. The albums start out needing just a few photos at first, and giving you only a few options for things like stickers, washi tape, and background paper, but as you complete the levels, you unlock more decorative items, and the number of photos and memorabilia you have to work with gets bigger and bigger, making each project more complex. As someone who loves journaling and crafting, I had a lot of fun playing with the layouts and the decorations, and I was impressed by the amount of details the devs thought to add. You can even choose if you want your washi tape to have ripped ends or not. The one thing I didn't really love was that because the layouts are meant to act as little puzzles, you have to lay out the photos in a very exact chronological order or else you can't progress. The good news though is that you can turn off the forced chronological order if you want. I found it helpful to have the setting turned on while I was determining the exact correct order of everything, and then I turned it off to design the layout how I saw fit. All in all, I really enjoyed the demo for Instance, and I'm looking forward to the full game. It's currently set to release sometime in 2025. Next up was Solarpunk, a survival game that takes place on a floating island where you can construct buildings, start a farm, craft tools and gadgets, and even ride an airship to explore other sky islands. This was another one that I didn't think I was interested in, maybe because of the multiplayer aspect it's supposed to have. I think I thought it was supposed to be more of like a shooty MMO type of game, and maybe it is, but it certainly didn't seem like that from the demo. There didn't seem to be any enemies or creatures to battle, which was my biggest fear, honestly, but I was just by myself on this floating island, foraging and figuring out how to grow crops and build various tools. It was sort of like a first-person Palea, but by myself. The most intriguing aspect for me was the building mechanic. Using a build hammer, you can instantly build your own house, along with staircases, bridges, and other structures. As I only played the demo for about an hour, I only got to play with this mechanic for so long, and I'm very interested in experiencing more of it. As such, Solarpunk is now on my wishlist, and I'm eagerly awaiting its release sometime in 2025. Next in the list was Tiny Garden, which lets you grow, you guessed it, a tiny garden. Nestled inside a little toy that is reminiscent of the Polly Pocket toys of my childhood. In your tiny garden, you grow crops and other plants, use the produce as currency to buy more seeds along with tools and furniture, and then you can decorate a little living space in the top half of the toy while your garden flourishes in the bottom half. It was a cute little demo, but it was a bit too slow and repetitive for me personally. You pass the time by turning a crank on the side of the toy, and certain crops take more cranks than others to grow, and that was interesting at first, but eventually it felt like an endless loop of buy seeds, plant, turn the crank, harvest. Buy seeds, plant, turn the crank, harvest. Buy seeds, maybe have a little bit left over to buy decoration with, plant, turn the crank, harvest. And unfortunately, that's just not enough to keep me engaged. If you like that kind of slower, almost idle gameplay style though, I would recommend giving it a try, as the art style is very vibrant and very cute, and the game has very clearly been made with love. Tiny Garden is scheduled to release on April 8th, 2025. Up next was Out and About, also known as Wholesome Out and About. This is a game that's been on my wishlist since it was announced back in 2022, and it's been considered a bit controversial since then, in part due to the weird thing with the name. The game was originally called Wholesome Out and About, but has since been renamed just Out and About. However, because that's not a name that stands out that much, plus people had already wishlisted it under its original name, the game is seemingly called both Out and About and Wholesome Out and About, with the game coming up on the Steam search as Out and About, but depending on how that particular listing is displayed, it might read as Wholesome Out and About instead, and the graphics on both the Steam page and in the demo itself still say Wholesome Out and About. So needless to say, that didn't inspire much confidence in me going in. However, I was pleasantly surprised by this game. It's described as a cozy foraging adventure about the magic of real-life plants, identify and gather wild plants and fungi, cook tasty recipes, master herbal remedies, and rebuild your community after a devastating storm. And that's pretty much exactly what it is. The plants are all based on those found in real life, with real descriptions of how to identify them and how to spot poisonous dupes. The art was charming, the story and dialogue were endearing, and the gameplay was simple while also being educational. I admit I was a little disappointed to discover that at least part of the storyline relies on the "you must fix this broken town" trope, but it does put its own spin on the idea where you help your grandmother run a food stall in town to both earn money to help with repairs and also to help keep up the spirits of the townfolk. Overall, I found Out and About to be quite a sweet and unique game, despite some of the weirdness surrounding its development. Sadly, it still has no release date listed, so we'll have to wait and see if it ever becomes a fully developed game. Next, I checked out the demo for Small Spaces, an interior decorating game centered around small living spaces, like single rooms or studio apartments. The art style is very beautiful and realistic, and there's a unique build mechanic where you can use blocks to add modular kitchens or storage space, and then you can cover those blocks in textures like metal or tile. While it's not described as a puzzle game, there is definitely some challenge to it, as each living space comes with both mandatory and optional requirements, such as certain types of furniture or things like a reading nook or a study corner, and sometimes getting all of the required items into one small space is rough, especially if you actually want it to look nice. I enjoyed my time with this demo, but unfortunately I think my computer is just too old for it, as the longer I played the laggier the game got, and that's usually a sign of my computer being 8 years old, not a sign of a game being bad. As such, despite having to cut my playtime short, Small Spaces is now on my wishlist and I hope to be able to check it out when it releases. There's currently no date announced, so hopefully I'll have a new PC by then. Urban Jungle was the next demo I tried, and this one was a little disappointing for me, but not because it's bad. I knew that this was more of a gardening game than a decorating game, but I didn't realize just how plant-centric it really was until I tried it. I know that's ironic considering the title of the game. Urban Jungle reminded me a little of Unpacking in that each chapter is a look into the main character's living space throughout different points in their life. It follows a story that's told intermittently in between the primary gameplay, which involves placing plants around the space in a way that meets each plant's needs. Each plant needs a certain amount of light and water, and they all have other plants that they either like or hate being placed near. You earn more points the happier your plants are, and those points are used to advance you to the next chapter. It seems simple enough, but the more plants you place down, the harder it is to meet all of their needs. Plus, you eventually unlock new plants that have different needs, and it all rapidly becomes more complicated. It really did feel like I was at a disadvantage as someone who doesn't garden, because it became harder and harder to remember all the needs of the plants that I had already placed down, and eventually they all started to look the same to me. And then because I couldn't remember what was what, each new plant I'd put down would be less happy, thus earning me less points, and thus taking even longer to advance to the next level. So needless to say, I don't think Urban Jungle is for me, but if you have a knack for plants, or at least a good memory for them, there's a high chance you'd enjoy this game. There's currently no release date announced as of yet. Next on my list was Duck Detective, The Ghost of Glamping. I'd never played a Duck Detective game before, even though some, if not all of them, are on my wish list, so naturally I had to play this demo. It was a little more simplistic than I was expecting, but it was still a good time. You play as the Duck Detective, obviously, and your roommate, Freddy Crederson, the alligator, crocodile? Alligator? Crocodile? Anyways, he's forced you to go on a glamping trip with him to meet his new girlfriend. Upon arrival at the campsite, you learn a crime has been committed, so you put your detective skills to work. You interview other campers and search for evidence, and you put everything together in a Mad Lib-style word puzzle minigame, narrowing down the suspects. The art is in a cute, animated paper style, and you even have opportunities to cause random chaos by running into things and knocking them over, like any good waterfowl would. Duck Detective: The Ghost of Glamping is set to release sometime in 2025. This next demo I found by just browsing the Next Fest list on Steam. It's called Elroy and the Aliens. The description reads, it's the year 1993. Talking robots, ghosts from the past, and ancient alien technology buried under the desert sand. An adventure following Elroy and Peggy in search of a long-lost father. How far would you go to bring back the ones you love? What drew me in first and foremost was the art style. It reminds me very much of the Saturday morning cartoons from my childhood. The game itself is a point-and-click adventure game where Elroy, the son of a missing scientist and explorer, invites a reporter named Peggy over to his house to watch the launch of his homemade rocket. Things go awry, but in the process, Elroy discovers that his father, who he has long thought was dead, might actually be alive, and he decides that he needs to find out the truth. I found the story and the characters to be quite endearing, and this game that I had never heard of is now planted firmly on my radar. Elroy and the Aliens is set to release on April 2nd, 2025. Bookbound is a demo that I'd scrolled past on that Next Fest list, but I didn't really get my attention until I saw some other content creators talking about it. It's a pixel art game where you run your own bookstore, and while it's definitely cozy, my character wore a ridiculously adorable dragon hat the whole time, it definitely involves more time management than I expected. As you add more books and gain more customers, some people will want your help finding the book they're looking for, which is not a problem, except you also have to man the till, and keep the shelves stocked, and clean up the dirt that randomly appears on the floor. Oh, and did I mention that customers will also just randomly drop books on the floor for no reason? And at the end of the day, the customers just drop everything on the floor and leave even if you're mid-checkout. So it's cozy, yes, but it's also stressful, but in a fun way. You can also decorate your shop, which is always great, and there's a minigame that lets you essentially yell at people outside to make them come into your shop. Overall, Bookbound was a unique spin on a shop simulator, and I'm very interested to see where it goes when it releases on March 6, 2025. Whisper of the House is another one that I saw in passing but didn't take notice of until I saw it getting pretty good reviews. It's another unpacking-like, I'm pretty sure that's becoming a subgenre at this point, right? An unpacking-like, where you work at what is essentially an unpacking service. You help people move house and set up their living and workspaces, and much like unpacking, the order in which items come out of the boxes doesn't always make sense. Ah yes, a toothbrush and work boots in the same box, very nice! There seems to be a few secrets to unlock at some of the job locations, and some of the jobs really want you to cram a lot of stuff into a small space. It was an interesting take on a job sim, and I'm curious to see how it develops. Whisper of the House is scheduled to release again sometime in 2025. Another game that's been on my wish list for a bit now is Locomoto, a cute life sim where you play as a train conductor ferrying passengers to and fro on your train. It has a bit of an Animal Crossing vibe in that you and all the other characters are talking animals, but it's also very clearly its own thing. You can upgrade and decorate your train, in large part by searching around the different stop locations for materials, as well as by talking to bystanders who are trying to offload their wares. There's also a currency system that I didn't get into too much, but it involves depositing trash and recycling into the appropriate bins. Once you've disposed of enough garbage, thus cleaning up the local environment, you're rewarded with tokens that you can trade for various materials. I found item storage the most difficult aspect of the game, as you have very limited pocket space and you end up having to store things all over the train, which is a little awkward, but I may have misunderstood some of the tutorial and I missed an opportunity to have more space. I'm not entirely sure. Otherwise, it was a very chill but still interesting experience, and I would be interested to see more. Locomoto is currently set to release sometime in 2025. And finally, the last demo I played was Piece by Piece, another game that's been sitting and waiting on my wishlist. There's at least one other game on Steam with the same title, but the differences between them are pretty clear. This is the one with the cute cartoon animal. In Piece by Piece, you inherit your family's repair shop, cleaning up and repairing villagers' broken items for them. The repair minigame is puzzle-based, and it was actually quite difficult at times. You have to slot each broken piece into a 3D hologram of the item, rotating both the pieces and the hologram until they line up perfectly. The hologram can be a little hard to see. I actually found it easier to see after dark, as the shop's nighttime lighting illuminated it better. And figuring out the exact angle to tilt everything at in order to line them up can be tough. That said, it's a unique mechanic that I haven't experienced in other games. I enjoyed the demo overall, but there were some times where the tutorial was lacking, like when it told me to buy logs for my furnace from the merchant outside, but then failed to tell me that I couldn't actually use the logs until I chopped them up first. The camera when you're in the main shop is also locked at a really high angle, like 95% of the time, so you spend a good chunk of your time looking down on the store and the characters from the rafters, and you feel like you're like a mile away. It was very cute though, and it's another game that I will continue to follow in the future. Currently, Piece by Piece has no scheduled release date. And there you have it, all 15 of the demos I spent most of my time on for the Winter 2025 edition of Steam Next Fest. What were your favorite demos from this round? Let me know if I missed out on any gems, because I almost certainly did. Remember to like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and I will see you in the next one, which will hopefully be very soon. Okay, bye!